Okay, so once again, good morning, everyone. So this time, our topic is about ethical context in research. No, so the research ethics, provides guidelines for the responsible conduct of research. So in addition, it educates and monitors scientists conducting research to ensure a high ethical standard. So we may consider, some ethical principles like honesty, of course, integrity, carefulness, openness, respect for intellectual property, confidentiality, responsible publication, responsible mentoring, of course, respect to your colleagues, social responsibility, non-discrimination, competence, legality, even the animal care, of course, and human subjects protection must consider. So again, some research misconducts, like fabrication, falsification, and plagiarisms must also consider and understand as a researcher. For us now, of course, to do a research or an honestly report data and results, method and procedures, and publication status. So again, we do not fabricate, falsify, or misrepresent data because ethical context is comprised of the principles, social norms, and actions that support ethical decision-making and behavior in the workplace. Okay, so to give us more details about the topic, let us all welcome our presenter. Go ahead.
All right, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Doc Marmelo. This is Crystal Retiro, and my lesson for today is Lesson 7, Ethical Context of Research. Ethical context of research. So, ethics in research, it is important as it provides researchers with ethical principles or guidelines for the successful conduct of research. Now, first, let us know what is ethics. Ethics are the moral principle that a person must follow, irrespective of the place or time. Behaving ethically involves doing the right thing at the right time. So basically, ethics is the morality of a human act. And by morality, we mean the rightness or wrongness of a human act. Speaking of ethics, it is concerned with what is good for the people and the society as a whole. And that is why ethics really matters because it urges us to do good to others and take responsibility of what we do. It was like we will be dealing with the Ten Commandments now, but as a branch of philosophy that concerns itself with questions of how people act, therefore, it provides rules that govern the society as a whole, and this explains why behaving ethically means doing the right thing at the right time. Also, we have here research ethics. Research ethics focus on the principles that researchers must follow in their respective field. It provides guidelines for the responsible conduct of research. It educates and monitor researchers to ensure a high ethical standard. So aside from the fact that the researchers, we must ensure that research subjects or yung mga participants natin, they are not being placed in a harmful way. So they need to be reminded, we as a researchers, we need to be reminded that we have this moral obligation to provide the maximum benefits to the participants. And that means that researchers should not be thinking only of their own interest, why they conduct the research, but also it is for the reason that researchers must be guided by ethical principles in the conduct of research to maintain integrity and also to avoid research misconduct. So I have here the summary of the ethical principles. First, we have honesty. Honestly report data results, methods, and procedures. So for honesty, this only means that the researchers you shouldn't fabricate, falsify, or misinterpret data. This is very common as for the researchers know. So we have to avoid it. We have to publish an honest research paper. Objectivity, strive to avoid bias. So if we say strive to avoid bias in an experimental design, in a data analysis, data interpretation, peer review, personal decisions, grant writing, expert testimony, and other aspects of research. Now, bias happens when the writers choose the language that is either not specific or yung mga insensitive na to labels, no? So, if you guys are aware with the section 5 of the APA manual, it covers the many ways that bias can appear, and also bias can appear in writing, of course, and also how to avoid it. Next is integrity. Keep your promises and agreements. Act with sincerity. Strive for consistency of thought and action. So researchers should always put in mind that they have that fundamental obligation to their colleagues, to the public, and also to themselves to ensure that the integrity of research data and also the members of the research community trust that their colleagues will adhere to the standards of their field and will be transparent in describing the methods used to generate the data. That is why integrity is very important. Carefulness. Avoid careless errors or negligence. Okay, for carefulness, we have to be very careful and critically examine our own work and also the work of our peers. No? So we have to keep good records of research activities. This is one of the most significant factors for the success in every research. No? All the work needs to be very critically reviewed to make sure that our research it meets the standards of credibility and also avoid the mistakes that are done out of carelessness. Next is openness. Share data, results, idea, tools, and resources. So for openness, we have to be open to criticism and new ideas. For openness, it is being transparent with our research. Respect for intellectual property. We have to honor patents, copyrights, and other forms of intellectual property. Do not use unpublished data, methods, or results without permissions. Okay, so we have to give credit where credit is due, never plagiarize. Okay, this also includes the refusal to misuse other patents, trade secrets, or other proprietary information. We have this golden rule by Confucius. Now, if you guys are aware with that, don't do unto others what you don't want done unto you. Okay, that's a golden rule. Okay, so sooner or later, our own research can also be used by the future researchers. And with that, we don't want it just to be used without our permission, of course, or without giving credits. So it means putting oneself in the position of others. Next is confidentiality. For confidentiality, protect confidential communications such as papers or grants submitted for publication, personal records, trade or military secrets, and the patient records. Okay, so it is crucial that the researchers respect the confidentiality of and the data provided by their participants. So we have to respect it in all due. So sa lahat ng pwede nating, lahat ng makakaya natin. No? So in an ethically and legally appropriate manner. This means that thinking about how to safely and appropriately store and manage participants' data before any data is being collected. Next is responsible publication. Publish in order to advance research and scholarship, not just to advance just your own career. Okay, so we also have to think about yung kung ano ba yung magiging outcome ng ating magiging research. No? So we have to avoid the duplicative publication. That is why we need to search it sa mga libraries, no, kasi baka na-publish na siya, magkaroon ng duplicative, no. So publication, we are all aware that this is the final stage of the research and therefore a responsibility for all researchers, because publication forms the basis for both the new research and the application of findings. So they can affect not only the research community but also indirectly the society at large. So researchers, therefore, have a responsibility to ensure that their publications are honest, clear, accurate, complete, and balanced, and should avoid misleading, selective, or ambiguous reporting. Also, we have here the responsible mentoring. It helps to educate, mentor, and advise students, promote their welfare, and allow them to make their own decisions. Early in the collaboration, the mentor and trainee should create an agreement regarding the amount of time that they will devote to each other, ownership of the data, and so on. So as to maintain a healthy working environment. So responsible mentoring, dito na pumapasok yung pagpapacheck natin ng mga output natin, no, with the professors. Okay, so respect for colleagues. Respect your colleagues and treat them fairly. We have to strive to promote social good and prevent or mitigate social harms through research, public education, and advocacy. We have to avoid discrimination against colleagues or students on the basis of sex, race, ethnicity, or other factors not related to scientific competence and integrity. Okay, for social responsibility, we have to strive to promote social goods and prevent or mitigate social harms through research, public education, and advocacy. For social responsibility, our social responsibility, it arises not simply because research is funded directly or indirectly by the public, no? Kasi our research can also be funded by the public din naman. So our research is carried out in the name of the society as an expression and reflection of the society's needs, interests, priorities, and expected impact. So that is social responsibility. Non-discrimination. Avoid discrimination against colleagues or students on the basis of sex, race, ethnicity, or other factors that are not related to the scientific competence and integrity. Okay, so this one is very straightforward din naman. So as well as the competence. We have to we have to maintain and improve your own professional competence and expertise through lifelong education and learning. Now, for legality, we have to know and obey relevant laws and institutional governmental policies. So we have to be aware when it comes to on legality also. No? We have to comply with the law needed with our own research. Okay. For animal care, show proper respect and care for animals when using them in research. Okay. We do not need to conduct unnecessary or poorly designed animal experiments. Also, we need to always consider animal rights at all times if our research has something to do with them. Of course, we have to respect the animals din naman. No? They have these animal rights din naman if they are has something to do with our research. So, yeah, that's animal care. And lastly, the human subject protection. Okay, so when conducting a research on human subjects, we have to minimize harms and risks and maximize benefits. Respect human dignity, privacy, and autonomy. Take special precautions with vulnerable populations and strive to distribute the benefits and burdens of research fairly. Okay, for this one, I'd like to share with you guys the famous Nazi experimentation, if you guys are aware with that. It was a series of medical experiments on a large number of concentration camp that is yung Auschwitz concentration camp na tinatawag, no. So yeah, it involves mga camp prisoners including children and conducted by the Nazi Germany. It is well known during the Nazi regime in Germany because Nazi doctors and researchers, they performed this very horrific and painful experiments on thousands of imprisoned people in concentration camps. That was dated 1942 to 1945. These experiments, these were very inhumane and it resulted in trauma, permanent disabilities, or death in many cases. The participation of prisoners, it was always forced. So the consent was never sought. And participants, they often belong to the marginalized communities, including yung mga Jewish people, disabled people, and the Roma people. So after some Nazi doctors were put on a trial for their crimes, the Nuremberg Code of the Research Ethics for Human Experiment was developed in 1947. That is to establish a new standard for human experimentation in medical research. Okay, so nagkaroon na ng mas mahigpit, nagkaroon na ng mas care when people involved sa isang experiment or sa isang research. Next is, why do ethics matter? Why do ethics matter? So I have here the several reasons why it is important to adhere to ethical norms in research. First is promote the aims of research, such as knowledge, truth, and avoidance of error. For example, no, prohibitions against fabricating, yung kanina na diniscuss ko nga, no? So, falsifying or misrepresenting research data, promote the truth, and also to minimize error. Also, we have here promote the values that are essential to collaborative work. Okay, so since research, it often involves a great deal or cooperation and coordination among many different people in different disciplines and institutions. So ethical standards, it promotes the value that are essential to collaborative work, such as yung trust, accountability, mutual respect, and fairness. Okay, third one, helps to ensure that researchers can be held accountable to the public. Okay, so many of the ethical norms, it helps to ensure that researchers can be held accountable to the public. For instance, mga federal policies on research misconduct, conflict of interest, the human subject protection, and of course, yung animal care, they are being used and necessarily in order to make sure that researchers who are funded by the public money can be held accountable to the public. Okay. Next, ethical norms in research also help to build public support for research. So people are more likely to fund a research project if they can trust the quality and integrity of our research. And lastly, of course, promote a variety of other important moral and social values such as social responsibility, human rights, and animal welfare, compliance with the law, and public health and safety. Okay, that one actually sums up all of my all of my reports, no, yung kanina na din-discuss ko din, and as well as the ethical decision. Okay, so that's that 5 reasons. Those are some of the reasons why the ethical research is very important. Okay, and that's the end of my report. I would like to leave you guys with this short quote from Martin Luther King: "The time is always right to do what is right." I hope you guys is doing great with our research, no, and good luck with that. Okay, so thank you for listening and have a great day. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much, Ms. Presenter. No? So again, the research ethics matter for scientific integrity, human rights, and dignity, and collaboration between science and society. So these principles make sure that participation in studies is voluntary, informed, and safe for research subjects. So you'll balance pursuing important research excuse aims with using ethical research methods and procedures. So it's always necessary to prevent permanent or excessive harm to participants, whether inadvertent or not. Defying research ethics will also lower the credibility of your research because it's hard for others to trust your data if your methods are morally questionable. So even if a research idea is valuable to society, it doesn't justify violating the human rights or dignity of your study participants. No? So before you start any study involving data collection with people, you'll submit your research proposal to an institutional review board. If there are, especially let's say for example in UCC, in case merong review board, no, para ma-consider, because majority of the universities and colleges has their own institutional review board, no? Because an IRB is a committee that checks whether your research aims and research design are ethically acceptable and follow your institutional code or conduct. So they check that your research materials and procedures are up to code. No, if successful, you'll receive their approval and you can begin collecting data according to the approved procedures. If you want to make any changes to your procedures or materials, you'll need to submit a modification application to the ethical board for approval. No, if unsuccessful, you may be asked to resubmit with modification, or your research proposal may receive a rejection. No? To get the ethical board approval, it's important to explicitly note how you'll tackle each of the ethical issues that may arise in your study. No, so a while ago, our presenter gave us some ethical issues. No, or there are several ethical issues you should always pay attention in your research design, and these issues can overlap with each other. So you'll usually outline ways you'll deal with each issue in your research proposals if you plan to collect data from participants. Now, again, I'll just want to reiterate once again, a voluntary participation. No, your participants are free to opt in or out of the study at any point in time. Informed consent. No, participants know the purpose, benefits, risk, and funding behind the study before they agree or decline to join. Anonymity, no, of course, you don't know the identities of the participants, so personally identifiable data is not collected. Excuse. The confidentiality, no, you know who the participants are, but you keep that information hidden from everyone else. So you anonymize personally identifiable data so that it can be linked to other data by anyone else. So most commonly in our survey questionnaire, name will be optional. No? So then the potential for harm, no, a while ago, our presenter mentioned, either physical, social, psychological, and all other types of harm are kept not to an absolute minimum. And you need to ensure your work is free of plagiarism or research misconduct, and you accurately represent your result or represent your results. No? So when it comes to voluntary participation, means that all research subjects are free to choose to participate without any pressure or coercion. No? So a while ago, I mentioned that all participants are able to withdraw from or leave the study at any point without feeling an obligation to continue, because your participants don't need to provide a reason for leaving the study. It's important to make it clear to participants that there are no negative consequences or repercussions to their proposal, to their refusal to participate. After all, they're taking the time to help you in the research process. So you should respect their decisions without trying to change their minds. So let's say, for example, when recruiting participants for an experiment, you inform all potential participants that they are free to choose whether they want to participate, and they can withdraw from the study anytime without any negative repercussions. Now, voluntary participation is an ethical principle protected by international law, actually, and many scientific codes of conduct. Now, take special care to ensure there's no pressure on participants when you're working with vulnerable groups of people who may find it hard to stop the study even when they want to. Okay, so when it comes to the informed consent, of course, it includes the information about the study benefits, risk, funding, and institutional approval. So it refers to the situation in which all potential participants receive and understand all the information they need to decide whether they want to participate. No? So let's say, for example, you recruit participants outside a train station for a quick survey. So you make sure to provide all potential participants with all the relevant information about what the study is about, the risk and benefits of taking part, how long the study will take, and your supervisor's contact information and the institution's approval number. You also let them know that their data will be kept confidential and they are free to stop filing in the survey at any point for any reason. They can also withdraw their information by contacting you or your supervisor. So usually, or your advisor actually, usually you'll provide participants with a text for them to read and ask them if they have any questions. No, if they agree to participate, they can sign or initial the consent form. Note that this may not be sufficient for informed consent when you work with particular vulnerable groups of people. So if you're collecting data from people with low literacy, make sure to verbally explain the consent form to them before they agree to participate. For participants with very limited English proficiency, you should always translate the study materials or work with an interpreter so they have all the information in their first language. No? In research with children, you'll often need informed permission for their participation from their parents or guardians. Although children cannot give informed consent, it's best to also ask for their assent, no, to participate depending on their age and maturity level. Now, the anonymity means that you don't know who the participants are and you can't link any individual participants to their data. You can only guarantee anonymity by not collecting any personally identifying information, for example, names, phone numbers, email address, IP addresses, physical characteristic photos, and videos. Now, in any cases, it may be impossible to truly anonymize data collection. Let's say, for example, data collected in person or by phone cannot be considered fully anonymous because some personal identifiers are impossible to hide, like demographic information or phone numbers. You also need to collect some identifying information if you give your participant the option to withdraw their data at a later stage. No? So we have data pseudonymization. No? This will be the alternative method where you replace identifying information about participants with pseudonymous, no, or fake or identifiers. So the data can still be linked to participants, but it's harder to do so because you separate personal information from the study data. Let's say, for example, you're conducting a survey with college students. No, you ask participants to enter demographic information, including their age, gender, nationality, and ethnicity. So with all this information, it may be possible for other people to identify individual participants. So you pseudonymize the data. So each participant is given a random 3-digit number. You separate their personality, identifying information from their survey data, and include the participant numbers in both files. The survey data can only be linked to personal identifying data via the participant numbers. No? Then confidentiality means that you know who the participants are, but you remove all identifying information from your report. Also, all participants have a right to privacy, so you should protect their personal data for as long as you store or use it. Even when you can collect data anonymously, you should secure confidentiality whenever you can. Okay? To keep your data confidential, you take steps to safeguard it and prevent any threats to data privacy. Maybe everybody are very much familiar with Data Privacy Act of 2012. And you store all signed consent forms in a locked file drawer. And you password protect all files with survey data. Only other researchers approved by the board, let's say, for example, your institution board, no, ethical board, are allowed to access the study data, and you make sure that everyone knows and follows your institution's data privacy protocol. Some research design aren't conducive to confidentiality, but it's important to make all attempts and inform participants of the risk involved. Let's say, for example, in a focus group study, you invite 5 people to give their opinions on a new student service in a group setting. So before beginning the study, you ask everyone to agree to keep what's discussed confidential and to respect each other's privacy. So you also note that you cannot complete guarantee confidentiality or anonymity so that participants are aware of the risk involved. Okay, so a researcher, you have to consider all possible sources of harm to participants. No, harm can come in many different forms. As I mentioned, psychological harm. No. Because in some research, we have some sensitive questions or tasks may trigger negative emotions such as shame or anxiety. For the social harm, participation can involve social risk, public embarrassment, or stigma. For the physical harm, pain or injury can result from the study procedures. And the legal harm, reporting sensitive data could lead to legal risk or breach of privacy. It's best to consider every possible source of harm in your study as well as concrete ways to mitigate them. Involve your supervisor or your teachers or advisors to discuss steps for harm reduction. Make sure to disclose all possible risk of harm to participants before the study to get informed consent. So, if there is a risk of harm, prepare to provide participants with resources or counseling or medical services if needed. No? Let's say, for example, in a study on stress, no, you survey college student, no, on their alcohol consumption habit. Some of these questions may bring up negative emotions. So you inform participants about the sensitive nature of the survey and assure them that their responses will be confidential. You also provide participants with information about student counseling services and information about managing alcohol use after the survey is complete. And for the result of communication, the way you communicate your research result can sometimes involve ethical issues. Good science communication is honest, reliable, and credible. It's best to make your results as transparent as possible. No? They take steps to actively avoid plagiarism and research misconduct whenever possible. Again, plagiarism means submitting others' work as your own. Although it can be unintentional, copying someone else's work without proper credit amounts to stealing. It's an ethical problem in research communication because you may benefit by harming other researchers. No? Self-plagiarism is when you republish or resubmit parts of your own papers or reports without properly citing your original work. Take note of it. No? So let's say, for example, during your master's degree program, no, you develop or you create research related, let's say, for example, in your institution, let's say, for example, then you have some recommendations, no, during your master's degree program, and during your final dissertation, let's say, for example, in your doctorate degree, you decided to continue, no, to consider your recommendation during your master's degree program. So this will be what we call self-plagiarism. No, when you republish or resubmit parts of your own papers or reports without you need to properly citing your original work. No, this is problematic because you may benefit from representing your ideas as new and original, even though they have already been published elsewhere in the past. So you may also be infringing on your previous publisher's copyright, violating an ethical code, or wasting time and resources by doing so. So in extreme cases of self-plagiarism, entire data sets of papers are sometimes called duplicated. So these are majority ethical violations because they can skew research findings if taken as an original data. No, let's say, for example, you're conducting a meta-analysis of whether working from home is related to better stress management. So you gather all studies on this topic that meet your search criteria. You notice that two published studies have similar characteristics, even though they are from different years. Their sample sizes, location, treatments, and results are highly similar, and the studies share one author in common. So if you enter both data sets in your analysis, you get a different conclusion compared to when you only use one data set. Include both data sets would distort your overall findings. Now, so the research misconduct, no, means making up a falsifying data, manipulating data analysis, or misrepresenting results in research reports. It's a form of academic fraud. Actually, most commonly, no, especially way back 2000, no, or 19 something, no, a majority of the institutions has a 6 units, no. What I mean to say is thesis 1 and thesis 2 in one semester. Okay, so let's say, for example, right after passing the pre-oral defense, you need immediately, no, to conduct questionnaires, survey questionnaires, and so on and so forth. So for a limited time. So most commonly, ang ginagawa ng iba, of course, hindi naman lahat, dinadaya na lang yung data. No? Sabihin na lang isa, kaya kong gawa ng paraan yan, and so on and so forth. So this is what we call research misconduct. No? These actions are committed intentional and can have serious consequences. Research misconduct is not a simple mistake or a point of disagreement about data analysis. Because research misconduct is a serious ethical issue because it can undermine scientific integrity and institutional credibility. It leads to a waste of funding and resources that could have been used for alternative research. Okay, so some ethical failures, no, we have content warning, no, research scandal with ethical failures are littered, no, throughout history, but some took place not that long ago. So some scientists in positions of power have historically mistreated or even abused research participants to investigate research problem at any cost. No, these participants were prisoners under their care or otherwise trusted them to treat them with dignity. So to demonstrate the importance of research ethics, we'll briefly review research studies that violated human rights in modern history. Okay, we have also what we called Nazi experiment, no, Tuskegee syphilis study, and so on. Okay, so I think that's it for this topic. Thank you for the thank you sa ating presenter, no, very detailed, and she shared actually a lot with regards to research ethics. No, most of the time, especially in other university and colleges, mayroong part, no, sa chapter 3 na may research or ethical consideration or ethics, research ethics, no, in your chapter 1 to 3. Okay? So thank you.